She cried because Santa couldn't find their ship. The human pilot changed course. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the cold silence of deep space, aboard the interstellar cargo vessel Meridian's Hope, a young Valorian child named Kessa pressed her small blue face against the observation window, watching distant stars drift past like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Her family had been traveling for 8 months now, refugees seeking a new home after their planet's environmental collapse, and tonight was the human holiday called Christmas Eve. The Meridian's Hope was a massive vessel, nearly 3 kilometers long, carrying over 12,000 refugees from 17 different species. Most had never heard of Christmas before boarding, but the human crew members had spent weeks decorating the common areas with strings of lights and fragile ornaments, sharing stories about a magical figure called Santa Claus who brought gifts to children on this special night. Captain Marcus Dean stood on the bridge, reviewing their flight path. They were 17 days ahead of schedule, which meant they could afford to take the scenic route through the Andromeda Drift, a region known for its spectacular nebula views. It would add 3 days to their journey, but the refugees had been through enough. They deserved something beautiful. Lieutenant Sarah Morgan, his second-in-command, approached with a datapad. Her expression was troubled. "Marcus, we have a situation in Section 7. It's one of the Valorian children." The captain followed Sarah through the winding corridors of the ship, past families huddled in their assigned quarters, past the communal kitchens where volunteers prepared meals for thousands. The refugee sections were cramped but clean, and the crew had done their best to make them comfortable. In Section 7, they found a small crowd gathered outside one of the family pots. A Valorian couple stood helplessly as their daughter, who couldn't have been more than 6 in human years, sobbed inconsolably. Marcus knelt down to the child's level. His translator device hummed softly as it processed her words. "What's wrong, little one?" Kessa looked up at him with large, luminescent eyes brimming with tears. She clutched a small wooden toy that one of the human crew members had carved for her. "Santa won't find us. We're moving too fast. He won't know where to look." The human captain felt his heart clench. Her parents looked embarrassed, apologizing in rapid Valorian that their daughter had taken the Christmas stories too literally. But Marcus held up a hand, silencing them gently. He studied the little girl's face, seeing genuine anguish there, the kind of pure childhood heartbreak that transcended species. "Tell me, Kessa, do you really believe in Santa Claus?" The girl nodded vigorously, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "The nice human lady in the kitchen told me all about him. She said he visits every child who believes. But we're so far from Earth, and we're going so fast. How will his reindeer find us in space?" Marcus stood slowly, his mind already working through the implications. Sarah watched him with growing concern. She had served under Captain Dean for 7 years and recognized that look. He was about to do something completely irrational that would somehow turn out to be exactly right. The captain tapped his communicator. "This is Captain Dean to all department heads. Emergency meeting in conference room Alpha in 15 minutes. Attendance is mandatory." Sarah followed him back toward the bridge, her voice low. "Marcus, please tell me you're not about to do what I think you're about to do." He glanced at her with a slight smile. "We're ahead of schedule, aren't we? We have 3 days of buffer time. That's not the point. You can't possibly be considering stopping a ship carrying 12,000 refugees in the middle of deep space because one child believes in Santa Claus. Why not?" They had reached the conference room. Marcus stood at the head of the table as his department heads filed in. Chief Engineer Tyler Grant, Medical Officer Dr. Emily Parker, Security Chief Blake Turner, and a dozen others took their seats, looking puzzled at the urgent summons. The captain got straight to the point. "I'm proposing we reduce our speed to 1/4 thrust and maintain a stable position in the current sector for the next 24 hours. The room erupted in confused questions. Tyler was the first to find his voice. "Captain, with all due respect, why would we do that? We're burning fuel, wearing down the engines, and we're already behind on maintenance schedules." "I'm aware of the costs," Marcus replied calmly, "but I want you to hear me out." He explained the situation with Kessa, watching his officers' faces carefully. Some looked skeptical, others confused. Dr. Parker leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. So you want to stop the ship so Santa Claus can find us? The way she said it wasn't mocking. She was genuinely trying to understand. Not stop completely, Marcus clarified. Just slow down enough that a child can believe magic still exists in this universe. Blake Turner, the security chief, shook his head. Captain, I understand the sentiment, but we have over 12,000 refugees on this ship. We can't make major operational decisions based on one child's fantasy. It's not a fantasy to her, Marcus countered. And it's not just about Kessa. Think about what these people have been through. The Valorians lost their entire world. The Centauri families fled a civil war. The Draven escaped religious persecution. These refugees have lost their homes, their cultures, their sense of safety. And now they're hurtling through space on a ship that, to most of them, might as well be a prison. Sarah spoke up, her tone softer now. What exactly are you proposing? Marcus pulled up a star chart on the conference room display. We're currently passing through a relatively stable sector. Low radiation, no debris fields, minimal traffic. If we reduce speed and maintain position here for 24 hours, it gives us an opportunity to do something special. He looked around the room at each of his officers. We throw a proper Christmas celebration. We get the whole ship involved. And we make sure that every child on board, not just the human ones, experiences something magical. Because right now, magic is in pretty short supply for these families. Tyler rubbed his face, running calculations in his head. The fuel consumption would be significant, but not catastrophic. We'd still make it to New Haven Station with reserves to spare. It's doable, from an engineering standpoint. But Marcus, this is still a huge allocation of resources for what amounts to theater. Good theater, though, Dr. Parker interjected. Psychological health is just as important as physical health. These refugees, especially the children, are showing signs of severe trauma and depression. A major positive event, something communal and joyous, could have real therapeutic value. Blake crossed his arms. I'm not saying I disagree with the mental health angle, but we need to be practical. What happens when other families want us to accommodate their cultural or religious practices? Where do we draw the line? That's a fair concern, Marcus acknowledged. But this isn't about establishing a precedent for stopping the ship for every celebration. This is about recognizing a moment where we can make a significant positive impact with relatively minimal cost. We have the time buffer. We have the fuel reserves. And we have 12,000 people who need to remember that the universe isn't entirely hostile. The room fell silent as the officers considered his words. Finally, Sarah spoke. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. We'll need to coordinate with the refugee community leaders, organize the celebration, and most importantly, we need to figure out how to convince a 6-year-old Valorian girl that Santa Claus found our ship in deep space. Marcus smiled. I'm open to suggestions on that last part. What followed was 2 hours of increasingly creative planning. The crew threw themselves into the project with surprising enthusiasm. Tyler volunteered to create a technical light show using the ship's external sensors and maneuvering thrusters that would look like reindeer and a sleigh approaching the vessel. Dr. Parker offered to coordinate with the medical staff to create small gift packages for every child on board, tailored to each species' needs and preferences. Blake, despite his initial skepticism, suggested using the cargo bay to set up a massive celebration space. We've got that shipment of terraforming equipment for New Haven. It's all secured and stable. We can clear enough space to fit at least 2,000 people at a time. We could run multiple celebration sessions. The communications officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Megan Brooks, raised her hand hesitantly. I might have an idea for Santa himself. Marcus gestured for her to continue. Well, we have Chief Petty Officer Ethan Cole down in supply. He's got the build for it, and I've heard him tell stories to the refugee kids. He's got that warm, grandfatherly presence. Plus, he's already been growing his beard out. We could work with that. The plan came together with remarkable speed. Each department head took responsibility for different aspects of the celebration. The engineering team would handle the technical effects and the physical setup of the celebration space. Medical would coordinate gifts and health screenings disguised as Santa's list checking. Security would manage the flow of refugees through the cargo bay in organized groups. The galley staff volunteered to prepare special meals, incorporating traditional Christmas foods alongside dishes familiar to the various refugee species. As the meeting concluded and officers hurried off to their assignments, Sarah lingered behind with Marcus. "You know this is insane, right?" He nodded. "Completely insane. But it's also completely necessary." She studied her captain's face. "This is about more than just one crying child, isn't it?" Marcus moved to the observation window, looking out at the endless stars. "When I was 7 years old, my father was deployed on a deep space mission. He was gone for 18 months. That first Christmas without him, I was devastated. I couldn't understand why he had to be so far away, why he couldn't come home for the holidays. My mother tried her best, but nothing could fill that absence." He turned back to Sarah. "Then, on Christmas Eve, we got an unexpected transmission. My father had convinced his captain to delay their survey mission by 6 hours so he could send a live video message. It was against regulations. It was technically a waste of resources, but that captain understood that sometimes the human element matters more than the mission parameters. That 6-hour delay and 5-minute video message meant everything to me. It told me that I mattered enough for a starship captain to break the rules." Sarah moved to stand beside him. "So you're paying it forward. In a way, these refugees have lost so much. Their worlds, their futures, their sense of control. If we can give them one night where impossible things happen, where magic is real and kindness triumphs over cold logistics, then maybe we give them something to hold on to. Hope is a powerful thing, Sarah. Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps people going." Within hours, the entire ship was buzzing with activity. Word spread quickly through the refugee sections about the mysterious slowdown and the promised celebration. The human crew members became suddenly secretive and excited, which only heightened the anticipation. In the engineering bay, Tyler and his team worked on programming the external sensor arrays to project holographic images into space around the ship. It was technically a misuse of scientific equipment, but Tyler found himself grinning as he calibrated the projectors. "When was the last time we used this multi-million credit sensor suite to create flying reindeer?" "Never," replied his assistant, a young ensign named Connor Wells who was enthusiastically modeling the reindeer based on ancient Earth images. "That's when you know it's worth doing." In the medical bay, Dr. Parker and her staff assembled gift packages with impressive efficiency. For the human children, traditional items like books, toys, and puzzles. For the Valorian young ones, crystalline structures that refracted light in patterns that mimicked their lost homeworld's auroras. For the Centauri cubs, scent markers that reminded them of their family gardens. For the Draven hatchlings, heating stones etched with traditional blessing symbols. Every gift was chosen with care, demonstrating that someone had paid attention to each child's individual needs and cultural background. "This is going to cost the ship's discretionary funds significantly," noted the head nurse, Lieutenant Jessica Lane. Dr. Parker smiled as she wrapped a delicate Valorian crystal in soft cloth. "Then it's money well spent. Besides, I have a feeling the crew is going to volunteer to cover these costs personally when they see the results." In the cargo bay, Blake Turner supervised the transformation of the industrial space into something magical. Strings of lights appeared, borrowed from every section of the ship. Fabric panels hung from the ceiling, creating the impression of a vast tent. Tables and chairs materialized, arranged in comfortable groupings. A large chair, obviously meant for Santa, took pride of place at one end of the bay, surrounded by wrapped packages. Blake stood back, surveying the work with a critical eye. "It actually looks good. Not what I expected when I woke up this morning, but good." His security team, hardened professionals who dealt with potential threats and crowd control, worked alongside refugee volunteers who had eagerly offered to help. A Centauri elder named Theron carefully arranged decorations, his thick fur bristling with concentration. "In my long life, I have seen many strange things. But humans stopping a starship for a children's holiday? This is both the most illogical and most beautiful thing I have witnessed." Blake found himself smiling. "We're a contradictory species." Theron's translator rumbled with his deep laugh. "All species are contradictory, young human. But your species seems to embrace the contradiction rather than fight it. That is perhaps your greatest strength." In the galley, the cooking staff faced the enormous challenge of preparing a feast for thousands representing multiple species with vastly different dietary requirements. Chef Cameron Lowe, a grizzled veteran with 30 years of space service, orchestrated the chaos with practiced ease. The humans get traditional turkey, ham, and all the trimmings. The Valorians need high-protein aquatic dishes. The Centauri are obligate herbivores, so vegetable roasts with those spice compounds they love. The Draven eat mostly grains and fungi, so we're doing that mushroom casserole thing we developed. Everyone gets dessert because dessert is universal. His staff moved like a well-trained military unit, which made sense since most of them had military backgrounds. They prepared thousands of portions with assembly line efficiency, but each dish received individual attention and care. This wasn't just feeding refugees. This was creating an experience. Meanwhile, in the quiet of the supply section, Chief Petty Officer Ethan Cole was being fitted for his role as Santa Claus. The costume had been assembled from various uniform components, dyed red, with white trim created from medical gauze and synthetic fur from the biology lab's animal study materials. Lieutenant Brooks adjusted his beard, which was mostly his own facial hair supplemented with additional synthetic material. "You look perfect." Terrifying, but perfect. Ethan examined himself in the mirror. "I look like someone's nightmare version of a holiday mascot." "You look like Santa Claus," Brooks assured him. "And more importantly, you're going to make a lot of children very happy tonight. That's what matters." Ethan sighed, settling into the role. "I've done a lot of strange things in my 25 years of service, but this might be the strangest. It's also the best." Brooks handed him a data pad with information about each child who would be visiting Santa. Names, species, basic background, current situation. "Read through this. Personalize each interaction. Make every kid feel seen." As Ethan scrolled through the files, his expression grew more somber. These kids had been through hell. Loss, trauma, fear, uncertainty about their futures. If dressing up as a mythical Earth figure could bring them even a moment of joy, he'd do it gladly. On the bridge, Marcus monitored the ship's systems as they reduced speed. The massive vessel shuddered slightly as the engines throttled back, settling into a stable position relative to the surrounding space. Navigation Officer Lieutenant Noah Ellis confirmed their position. "We're in a good spot, Captain. Minimal drift, no hazards within 10 million kilometers. We could sit here for a week if we needed to." "Let's stick with 24 hours, Marcus replied. "But I appreciate the cushion." Sarah checked the various department reports flowing in. Engineering reports the external holographic systems are ready. Medical has confirmed all gift packages are distributed to staging areas. Security has the cargo bay set up and volunteer coordinators briefed. Galley is on schedule for meal service. Everyone's ready when you give the word. Marcus took a deep breath. "Then let's make some magic happen. Send the ship-wide announcement." Sarah activated the communications system, and Marcus's voice echoed through every corridor and compartment of the Meridian's Hope. "Attention all passengers and crew. This is Captain Dean. As you may have noticed, we have reduced our speed and established a stable position. I want to assure everyone that this is completely intentional and there is no emergency. Tonight is Christmas Eve, a human holiday celebrating hope, generosity, and the belief that miracles can happen even in the darkest times. Many of you have learned about this holiday during our journey, and some of you, especially the younger passengers, have embraced its traditions and stories." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We humans have a saying. Home is where the heart is. For the next 24 hours, I want the Meridian's Hope to feel like home for everyone aboard. We have prepared a celebration in Cargo Bay 3, and everyone is invited to attend in scheduled groups. There will be food, music, gifts for the children, and a very special visitor who has traveled a long way to be here tonight. Check your personal data pads for your assigned celebration time. To the children listening, I have good news. Santa Claus knows exactly where you are. He's been tracking our ship, and he'll be arriving shortly. So make sure you're on your best behavior. Captain Dean out." The response was immediate and overwhelming. In the refugee sections, children shrieked with excitement. Parents who had been skeptical found themselves caught up in their children's enthusiasm. Even the adults who had no cultural connection to Christmas seemed eager to participate in something communal and positive. In Section 7, Kessa's parents stared at the announcement speaker in disbelief. Her father, Torvin, shook his head slowly. Did the human captain just alter the course of a starship carrying 12,000 beings, Because our daughter was crying about Santa Claus? Her mother, Lissa, knelt down and pulled Kessa into a tight embrace. The girl's tears had stopped, replaced by wide-eyed wonder. I told you, Mama. I told you Santa would find us. The human captain made the ship slow down so he could catch up. Lissa looked up at her husband with tears in her own eyes. I do not understand these humans. They are infuriatingly illogical and impossibly kind. Torvin pulled both his wife and daughter into his arms. Perhaps that is why the galaxy needs them. Logic alone makes for a cold universe. The celebrations began at 1800 hours, with groups rotating through the cargo bay every 90 minutes. The first group consisted primarily of human families with young children, who would set the tone and energy for the subsequent sessions. As the cargo bay doors opened, gasps of wonder rippled through the crowd. The industrial space had been completely transformed. Lights twinkled overhead like stars. Fabric panels created intimate spaces within the vast room, and tables laden with food stretched along one wall. Music played softly, a mix of traditional Christmas carols and instrumental pieces from various cultures. But the centerpiece was unmistakable. At the far end of the bay, Chief Petty Officer Ethan Cole sat in an enormous chair decorated with lights and greenery, wearing his red suit and synthetic beard. He looked every inch the legendary Santa Claus, and the children's reactions confirmed the illusion's success. The first child to approach Santa was a shy human girl named Emma, no more than 5 years old. Her mother gently encouraged her forward. Ethan's demeanor transformed completely. His voice became warm and grandfatherly, his movements slow and welcoming. Hello there, Emma. I've been looking forward to meeting you. How do you know my name? Santa knows every child's name. That's part of the job. Now, I understand you've been very helpful to your mother during this long journey. She helps me every day, Emma's mother confirmed, her own voice thick with emotion. Ethan reached beside his chair and produced a carefully wrapped package. This is for you, Emma. Something special from the North Pole. Well, for my traveling North Pole, anyway. The girl accepted the gift with trembling hands and tore into the wrapping with typical child enthusiasm. Inside was a beautiful picture book featuring Earth animals, something she could keep and treasure as a connection to humanity's homeworld. Her squeal of delight set the tone for the evening. Child after child approached Santa, each receiving individual attention and a personalized gift. Ethan had memorized key details about each one, asking specific questions that proved he knew them personally. He asked young Lucas about his collection of spacecraft models. He inquired whether Sophia still wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. He congratulated Jake on learning to read in 3 languages. The parents watched in amazement as the gruff supply chief became a figure of pure magic and kindness. But the real test came when the first non-human children entered the bay. Would the illusion hold for species that had no cultural connection to Christmas or Santa Claus? A young Valorian boy named Torin approached the big chair hesitantly. His skin was pale blue, his eyes large and luminous, his fingers webbed. He looked utterly alien standing before the very human Santa Claus. Ethan didn't miss a beat. Torin, my friend, come here. I've been practicing my Valorian greetings. He attempted a phrase in the boy's native language, and while his pronunciation was terrible, the effort meant everything. Torin's face split into a wide smile, revealing small pointed teeth. You said that very badly. Ethan laughed, a deep, genuine sound. I did, didn't I? Languages were never my strong point. That's why I usually let the reindeer do the talking. You have reindeer? In space? Of course. How else would I get around the galaxy? They're specially trained for deep space operations. Very professional animals. Torin giggled, and the sound broke through any remaining cultural barriers. He accepted his gift, a crystal that refracted light into patterns resembling his lost homeworld's auroras, and clutched it to his chest. Thank you, Santa. Thank you for finding our ship. Finding you is the easy part. Staying on schedule with all the stops I need to make, that's the challenge. The boy scampered back to his parents, showing them his gift with obvious pride. His father caught Ethan's eye and placed his hand over his heart in the Valorian gesture of deep gratitude. Ethan returned the gesture, feeling a lump form in his throat. The celebrations continued through the night, group after group experiencing the transformed cargo bay. The Centauri families arrived with their cubs, who were initially intimidated by the strange human in red, but quickly warmed up when they received gifts that smelled like home. The Draven hatchlings, typically reserved and formal, broke protocol to crowd around Santa's chair, chirping excitedly. Even the adult refugees found themselves drawn into the celebration. The food was exceptional, representing the best of multiple culinary traditions. The music created a backdrop that was both festive and soothing, and the sense of community, of shared joy despite vast cultural differences, created an atmosphere unlike anything the ship had experienced during the long journey. Between the scheduled celebration times, the crew worked tirelessly to maintain the magic. The engineering team monitored the holographic systems, making minute adjustments to ensure everything ran perfectly. The medical staff restocked gift packages and helped coordinate the flow of families through the bay. Security personnel, normally stern and professional, found themselves smiling as they guided excited children and their parents through the corridors. Even off-duty crew members volunteered to help, understanding they were part of something extraordinary. In the galley, Chef Cameron and his team barely had time to rest between meal services. Yet nobody complained. The energy throughout the ship was infectious, and every crew member felt the importance of what they were doing. Lieutenant Megan Brooks, watching from her communications station, noticed something remarkable happening on the ship's internal monitoring systems. The refugee sections, normally quiet and somber after lights out, were alive with activity. Families gathered in common areas, sharing stories about their visits with Santa. Children showed off their gifts to friends from other species, forming bonds that transcended language barriers. Parents who had been strangers before tonight exchanged contact information, planning to stay connected after reaching New Haven. The celebration had sparked something fundamental in the refugee community, a sense of hope, of possibility, a belief that their futures might hold joy as well as uncertainty. Dr. Parker made her rounds through the medical bay, checking on the few patients who couldn't attend the celebrations due to illness or injury. But even here, the spirit of the night penetrated. She brought small gifts to each patient, along with recorded video of the cargo bay celebration so they wouldn't feel left out. An elderly Draven patient, suffering from a chronic condition that made movement difficult, watched the recording with tears streaming down his weathered face. In all my years, I never expected to see such kindness from strangers. You humans are either the most foolish species in the galaxy or the wisest. Perhaps you are both. Dr. Parker patted his hand gently. We prefer to think of ourselves as optimistic. Sometimes the galaxy needs a little foolishness to remind everyone what's truly important. Back in the cargo bay, the celebrations took on different flavors as various cultural groups rotated through. The Centauri families brought their musical traditions, and soon the bay echoed with harmonious humming that resonated in frequencies humans could barely hear but found strangely beautiful. The Draven performed a traditional blessing ceremony, adapted to include Santa as an honored guest. Even the more reserved species found ways to participate, sharing aspects of their cultures while embracing the Christmas spirit. What emerged was something new and unprecedented. A truly multicultural celebration that honored the human holiday while incorporating elements from dozens of different traditions. It was messy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Ethan Cole, still in his Santa costume, felt his initial nervousness fade completely as the night progressed. Each child he met reminded him why this mattered. A young Centauri cub who had lost both parents in the Civil War and traveled with her grandmother. A Draven hatchling born in a refugee camp who had never known a permanent home. A human boy whose family had fled a failing colony, leaving everything behind. These children carried burdens no child should bear, and for one night, he could give them something pure and joyful. He found himself ad-libbing stories about Santa's adventures across the galaxy, making up elaborate tales about delivering presents on methane gas giants and dodging asteroid fields. The children hung on every word, their imaginations ignited by the possibilities. During a brief break between groups, Tyler appeared beside Ethan with a cup of water. "You're doing great out there, Chief. Really great." Ethan took a long drink, grateful for the respite. "I had no idea this would be so emotionally exhausting. Every kid has a story. Every family has been through hell. How do you keep smiling when you know what they've suffered?" Tyler glanced out at the decorated bay, at the families mingling and laughing. You keep smiling because that's exactly what they need. They've had enough sadness. Tonight, you're giving them permission to feel joy again. That's not a small thing, Ethan. That might be the most important thing any of us ever do. Ethan nodded slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more comfortably on his shoulders. Then let's make sure every single child leaves here believing in magic. The hours passed in a blur of smiling faces and grateful parents. Each session brought new challenges and new rewards. Some children were shy, requiring patient coaxing to approach Santa. Others bounded forward with unbridled enthusiasm, chattering excitedly in languages the translator struggled to process. Ethan handled each interaction with the same care and attention, making every child feel special and seen. He complimented a Valorian girl on her beautiful dress. He admired a Centauri boy's impressive knowledge of spacecraft engines. He listened intently as a Draven hatchling described the games they played with siblings back home. Every interaction was personal, meaningful, and crafted to give that specific child exactly what they needed in that moment. The volunteer coordinators, a mix of crew and refugee community leaders, watched the proceedings with satisfaction. Theron, the Centauri elder who had helped with decorations, stood beside Blake Turner near the entrance. Your species has a gift for this, the elder observed, for bringing people together, for creating community from strangers. The Centauri are an ancient people. We have developed many sophisticated systems for social cohesion. Yet I have never seen anything work as effectively as this simple celebration. Blake smiled, watching a group of children from 3 different species playing together near the refreshment tables. Maybe that's because you're thinking too complicated. Sometimes the best way to bring people together is just to give them a reason to celebrate. Shared joy is a powerful thing. But in Section 7, Kessa waited for her group's scheduled time with barely contained excitement. She had put on her nicest outfit, a traditional Valorian dress that her mother had packed during their evacuation. She clutched her wooden toy and bounced on her toes, driving her parents to distraction with constant questions. When will it be our turn? Is Santa really here? Did you see his reindeer? What if he doesn't have a gift for me? What if I've been bad and I didn't know it? Lissa smoothed her daughter's hair with gentle strokes. You have been wonderful, little star. If Santa brings gifts for good children, you will certainly receive one. Finally, their group's turn arrived. The family joined the stream of refugees making their way to Cargo Bay 3. Kessa held both her parents' hands, practically vibrating with anticipation. When the doors opened and she saw the transformed space, her mouth fell open in wonder. Is this real? She whispered. Her father squeezed her hand. It's as real as the people who created it for you. The family moved through the celebration space, and Kessa's eyes grew wider with each new sight. The lights, the decorations, the food, the music, and finally, at the end of the bay, the figure in red sitting in his enormous chair. That's him. That's really him. Her mother gently guided her forward. Would you like to meet Santa? Kessa nodded, suddenly shy now that the moment had arrived. They joined the line of children waiting for their turn, and Kessa watched in fascination as Santa spoke with each child, laughing and smiling and producing gifts that seemed perfectly suited to each recipient. Then it was her turn. She walked forward slowly, still clutching her wooden toy. Ethan had been briefed extensively about Kessa. This was the child who had started the entire celebration. He leaned forward, his expression warm and welcoming. Kessa, I've been hoping to meet you. You're the reason Santa came to our ship? Not just Santa. You're the reason your captain decided to make sure I could find you. That was very kind of you, to cry for Santa. It showed how much you believe. Tears welled up in Kessa's eyes again, but these were different tears. Happy tears. I was so worried. We were going so fast, and space is so big, and I thought you would never find us. Ethan reached out and gently took her small hand in his large one. Let me tell you a secret, Kessa. Santa always finds children who truly believe. It doesn't matter how fast they're moving or how far they are from Earth. Belief is like a beacon in the dark. It guides me exactly where I need to go. And your belief, little one, shines very brightly indeed. He reached beside his chair and produced a special package, larger than most of the others. This is for you. Something to remind you that magic is real, even in deep space. Especially in deep space. Kessa tore into the wrapping with trembling fingers. Inside was something extraordinary. A small holographic projector had been programmed with images of Earth's aurora borealis, but the engineering team had modified it to incorporate elements of Valoria's lost auroras as well. When activated, it would fill a small space with dancing lights in colors and patterns from both worlds. But that wasn't all. Nestled beside the projector was a handmade doll, clearly crafted by one of the crew members, dressed in a miniature version of a starship uniform. The doll's face had been carefully painted to resemble a Valorian child. "She's like me," Kessa breathed. "She's a Valorian on a spaceship." "Just like you," Ethan confirmed. "Because you're not just a refugee, Kessa. You're an explorer. You're traveling to a new world, a new home. That makes you very brave." The girl threw her arms around Santa's neck, wooden toy forgotten, holographic projector clutched tightly. "Thank you, Santa. Thank you for finding us." Ethan hugged her back, feeling the weight of responsibility and privilege. "Thank you for believing, Kessa. Never stop believing in impossible things." As Kessa returned to her parents, the entire cargo bay seemed to glow a little brighter. Lissa was openly crying, and even Torvin had to wipe his eyes. Other families, human and alien alike, watched the interaction with visible emotion. This wasn't just about gifts and decorations. This was about a community coming together to protect a child's innocence and wonder. The celebrations continued for hours, group after group cycling through the transformed cargo bay. But the grand finale was still to come. At precisely 2300 hours, an announcement echoed through the ship. "All passengers with access to observation windows, please direct your attention to the starboard side of the vessel. You are about to witness something special." Throughout the refugee sections, families crowded around the limited observation windows. On the bridge, Marcus gave the signal to Tyler in engineering. "Let's give them a show." The engineering team activated their carefully programmed holographic projectors. In the vacuum of space, visible through every starboard window, an image materialized. 9 massive reindeer pulling an equally massive sleigh appeared, complete with a rotund figure in red at the reins. The holograms were sophisticated, moving with realistic grace, seeming to keep pace with the Meridian's hope as it drifted through space. The sleigh was loaded with gift packages, and as the refugees watched in stunned silence, the holographic Santa waved cheerfully at the ship. The reindeer's noses glowed, particularly the lead reindeer, whose red nose was unmistakable. Children pressed their faces against the windows, screaming with excitement. Adults who had been skeptical found themselves grinning. Even the crew members who knew it was all technical wizardry felt a sense of wonder at the sight. In Section 7, Kessa's face was illuminated by the glow of the holographic sleigh. She clutched her new doll and holographic projector to her chest, bouncing up and down. "I see him. I see Santa. He really did find us." Her parents stood behind her, arms wrapped around each other, watching their daughter's joy. Torvin spoke softly to his wife. "I did not think I would ever see her smile like this again. Not after everything we lost." Lissa leaned her head against his shoulder. "The humans have a gift for finding light in darkness. Perhaps that is why the Galactic Council was so eager to accept them as members." The holographic display continued for 10 full minutes, the sleigh making a complete circuit around the ship before appearing to accelerate away into deep space, heading towards some distant world with more children waiting. As the image faded, cheers erupted throughout the Meridian's hope. The 24-hour celebration was a resounding success by every metric. Every child aboard received a gift. Every family experienced at least one meal together in a festive atmosphere. The refugee community leaders reported a dramatic improvement in morale. Dr. Parker's medical team noted a significant decrease in stress indicators among both children and adults. Even the crew members, who had worked tirelessly to make the event happen, seemed energized rather than exhausted by the effort. On the bridge, as the ship prepared to resume normal speed and continue toward New Haven Station, Marcus reviewed the reports with satisfaction. Sarah stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. Fuel consumption within predicted parameters. Engine systems nominal. No incidents or injuries during the celebrations. Overall passenger satisfaction rating at 97%. She looked up at her captain with a smile. "Congratulations, Marcus. You stopped a starship for Santa Claus, and somehow it turned out to be exactly the right decision. Marcus chuckled. Don't tell the Admiralty. They'll use it as a case study in either brilliant improvisation or catastrophic judgment failure. Probably both. Sarah became more serious. You know, word of this is going to spread. Every refugee on this ship will tell their story when we reach New Haven. The human captain who changed course for a crying child. Good, Marcus replied. Let it spread. Let people know that humanity doesn't just solve problems with technology and firepower. Sometimes we solve them with kindness and imagination. Besides, those refugees have suffered enough. If we can give them hope, give them a reason to believe that their new lives might be better than the ones they left behind, then every resource we spent was worth it. The Meridian's hope began to accelerate, engines humming as they built up speed once more. They still had 17 days until they reached New Haven Station, but the atmosphere aboard ship had fundamentally changed. Children who had been withdrawn and traumatized now played together in the common areas, clutching their gifts from Santa. Families who had kept to themselves began forming friendships across species barriers, brought together by the shared experience of the Christmas celebration. In the galley, Chef Cameron Lowe found himself fielding requests from refugee families who wanted to learn how to prepare traditional human holiday foods. In the cargo bay, the decorations remained up by popular demand, transforming the industrial space into a permanent communal gathering area. In the medical bay, Dr. Parker reported that therapy sessions were going better than expected, with children opening up more readily about their experiences. And throughout the ship, crew members found themselves being thanked by grateful refugees who appreciated not just the celebration itself, but what it represented. The willingness of humans to go to extraordinary lengths for the happiness of others, even at personal cost. The belief that joy and wonder were not luxuries but necessities, especially in difficult times. The understanding that sometimes the most illogical decisions were also the most profoundly correct ones. Chief Petty Officer Ethan Cole, back in his normal uniform with his synthetic beard safely stored away, found himself stopped constantly in the corridors by refugee children who recognized him. Some thanked him shyly. Others boldly claimed they had known it was him all along, but appreciated the performance. A few very young children still seemed to believe he actually was Santa Claus, just wearing a disguise for his day job. He handled each interaction with grace and warmth, having discovered a talent he never knew he possessed. The transformation in the ship's atmosphere was palpable in the days following the celebration. The refugee children, who had previously moved through the corridors in subdued silence, now played games and laughed freely. They organized their own small gatherings, sharing their gifts and creating new traditions that blended elements from their various cultures. A group of human, Valorian, and Centauri children invented a new game that combined rules from 3 different species, complete with hand-drawn playing cards and elaborate stories. The adults watched these interactions with wonder and gratitude, seeing their children heal in ways they hadn't thought possible. But the most significant impact was felt in Section 7, where Kessa's transformation was remarkable. The withdrawn, anxious child who had cried about Santa not finding their ship became the unofficial ambassador of hope for the Valorian refugee community. She carried her doll and holographic projector everywhere, showing them to anyone who would look. But more than that, she began seeking out other refugee children who seemed sad or scared, especially the younger ones. She would sit with them, activate her holographic projector, and tell them about Santa finding their ship, about the human captain who changed course, about how belief and hope could make impossible things happen. Her parents watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and amazement. Their daughter, who had been so traumatized by the loss of their homeworld that she barely spoke for the first month of the journey, had found her voice again, and she was using it to help others. Lissa found herself tearing up regularly as she observed Kessa's interactions with other children. One afternoon, she sought out Dr. Parker in the medical bay. I wanted to thank you personally, not just for the gift you gave Kessa, but for what your crew did for all of us. You gave us back our daughter. The doctor smiled warmly. We just created the circumstances. Kessa did the real work of healing. She's a remarkable child. You should be very proud. We are, Lissa replied. But I also want you to understand what you've taught her. She now believes, truly believes, that adults can be trusted to care about children's feelings, that authority figures will go out of their way to protect joy and innocence. In our experience as refugees, we had lost that belief. The humans of this ship have given it back to us. At night, she activated the projector, filling her family's small pod with dancing lights that recalled both Earth and Valoria. And she talked constantly about the kindness of the humans, about Captain Dean who slowed the ship, about Santa who found them in deep space, about all the crew members who worked so hard to create one perfect night. Her parents watched this transformation with profound gratitude. They also noticed something else. Their daughter's nightmares, which had plagued her since leaving Valoria, had stopped. The anxiety attacks that used to grip her when the ship made unexpected sounds had ceased. She slept peacefully now, her doll clutched in her arms, the soft glow of her holographic projector casting gentle lights across the ceiling. One evening, Torvin made his way to the bridge, requesting an audience with the captain. Marcus received him in his ready room, a small office off the main bridge. "Please sit. What can I do for you?" Torvin settled into the offered chair, his movements carrying the fluid grace typical of Valorians. "Captain Dean, I come to thank you personally for what you did. My daughter has not smiled like that since we fled our world. You gave her back something I thought was lost forever. But I also come to tell you something important. Something I think you should know about what your actions have meant to the Valorian community aboard this ship." Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. "Please, go on." Torvin's webbed fingers interlaced as he gathered his thoughts. "Among my people, we have a concept called Thesamir. It roughly translates to soul light, the inner spark that makes a being who they are. When Valoria's ecosystem collapsed, we watched our world die slowly. It took 5 years from the first signs of trouble until the evacuation. 5 years of watching everything we loved wither and fade. For the adults, this was a tragedy. But for the children, for young ones like Kessa, it was worse than death. It was watching their Thesamir, their soul light, dim and flicker. Many Valorian children developed what your doctors call depression and anxiety. But we understood it as something deeper. Their soul light was going out." He paused, emotion thick in his voice. The medical teams try to help. Counseling, medication, various therapies. They addressed symptoms, but could not rekindle the light. We Valorians, we are a people deeply connected to beauty and wonder. Our children need to see magic in the world, or their spirits truly do fade. Since the evacuation, I have watched my daughter's light grow dimmer every day. I feared it would go out completely. Then you stopped your ship. You brought Santa Claus to deep space. You showed my daughter that impossible things could still happen, that adults with power would use it to protect her capacity for wonder. And her Thesamir, Captain Dean, it burns bright again. You have done more than make her happy. You have saved her spirit." Marcus felt the weight of the Valorian's words settle over him. He had known the celebration was important, but hearing it described in these terms brought a new level of understanding. How many other children were affected this way? Torvin made a gesture that the translator interpreted as profound significance. According to the Valorian community leaders, every single one of our children showed improvement. 27 Valorian young ones travel on this ship. Before the celebration, 17 were being treated for severe psychological distress. After, all 27 are showing signs of recovery. You have rekindled 27 soul lights. Captain, among my people, this makes you something akin to a healer of the highest order. In our culture, such a person would be honored for generations. Marcus waved off the thanks. "I'm just glad we could help. Any captain would have done the same." Torvin's translator hummed as he made a sound that indicated disagreement. "With respect, Captain, I do not think that is true. I have met many captains in my life. Most would have considered my daughter's tears an unfortunate but unavoidable aspect of refugee transport. They would have prioritized schedule and efficiency over emotion. But you saw a child's pain and decided it mattered enough to alter your ship's course. That is not a common quality. I believe it is uniquely human." Marcus considered this. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's just the right thing to do, regardless of species. We all have children. We all understand the importance of protecting their innocence and wonder. I simply had the power to do something about it. Torvin leaned forward. "That is precisely my point, Captain. Power without compassion is tyranny. Compassion without power is useless sympathy. but power wielded with genuine compassion? That can change worlds. The captain felt uncomfortable with such lofty praise. I appreciate your words, but I was just being human. That is exactly why the Galactic Council was right to accept humanity as members, Torvin replied. We need your particular brand of illogical kindness. The galaxy has become too efficient, too focused on practical concerns. We have forgotten how to believe in impossible things. Your species remembers. You not only believe in impossible things, you make them happen. As Torvin left the ready room, Marcus sat quietly, reflecting on his words. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic community, having achieved faster than light travel only 70 years earlier. They were often dismissed as naive or reckless by older species. But perhaps that supposed naivety was actually a strength. Perhaps the willingness to do impractical things for emotional reasons was exactly what a cold, logical universe needed. The rest of the journey to New Haven Station passed smoothly. The refugees continued to organize small celebrations and gatherings in the decorated cargo bay. Friendships formed between species that had never interacted before. Children played together despite linguistic and cultural barriers. And through it all, the story of Santa finding the Meridian's hope in deep space grew into something larger. It became a parable about hope, about the importance of believing in goodness, about the lengths to which people would go to preserve innocence and joy. When the ship finally docked at New Haven Station, the refugee processing teams were surprised by the unusually high morale of the arrivals. Typically, refugees disembarked traumatized and despondent, facing an uncertain future with resignation rather than hope. But the passengers from the Meridian's hope were different. They smiled. They thanked the processing staff. They talked excitedly about their new lives. And they told stories about the incredible human crew that had transported them. The station administrator, a stern Centauri official named Coordinator Varen, called Captain Dean to his office shortly after docking. I have been processing refugee ships for 12 years, Captain Dean. This is the first time I have ever had refugees ask me how they can write commendations for a transport crew. Marcus smiled. We had an excellent crew. They worked very hard to make the journey comfortable. Varen's ears flicked in the Centauri gesture of skepticism. I have reviewed your flight logs. You deviated from your filed flight plan, reduced speed significantly, and consumed additional resources beyond normal operational parameters. Can you explain this? Marcus provided a carefully edited explanation, focusing on the mental health benefits and the overall positive outcome. He made no apologies for his decisions. Varen listened intently, his expression unreadable. Finally, the coordinator leaned back in his chair. This is highly irregular. Protocol demands I file a formal complaint about your deviation from approved routing. But you know what I am going to do instead? I am going to recommend your entire crew for the Galactic Humanitarian Service Award. Because what you did, Captain Dean, is precisely what refugee transport should be about. Not just moving bodies from point A to point B, but caring for the beings in your charge. Marcus felt a wave of relief. So we're not in trouble? Oh, you are absolutely in trouble, Varen replied with what might have been a smile. The Admiralty will have words about your creative interpretation of command authority. But you are in the right kind of trouble. The story of the Meridian's hope and its Christmas journey spread rapidly through both human and alien communities. News services picked it up as a feel-good story. Cultural anthropologists wrote papers about the successful cross-species celebration. Child psychologists studied the event as an example of effective trauma intervention. And in schools across human space, children learned about Captain Marcus Dean, who changed course because a little alien girl believed in Santa Claus. But for the people actually involved, the impact was more personal and profound. Kessa and her family successfully settled on New Haven, a planet with extensive aquatic environments suitable for Valorians. They maintained contact with the Meridian's Hope crew, sending occasional messages updating them on their new life. Kessa grew up to become a child advocate, working specifically with refugee children. She always kept her doll and holographic projector, using them in her work to illustrate the power of hope and kindness. The crew of the Meridian's Hope continued their transport missions, carrying refugees from troubled regions to new homes. But they also continued the tradition started that Christmas Eve, incorporating celebrations and special events into every journey. Other transport ships began adopting similar practices, recognizing the psychological benefits. Within 5 years, major holidays and cultural celebrations became standard elements of refugee transport protocols throughout the Galactic Council. Captain Marcus Dean was promoted to Commodore and given command of an entire humanitarian transport fleet. He selected his senior officers from the crew of the Meridian's Hope, including Sarah Morgan as his flag captain. Together, they revolutionized refugee transport, always remembering the lesson of that Christmas Eve. Sometimes the most important part of the journey isn't the destination. It's caring for the people along the way. Chief Petty Officer Ethan Cole reluctantly accepted an annual assignment as Santa Claus for refugee transport ships during the holiday season. He grumbled about it publicly, but always threw himself into the role with complete commitment. He received thousands of letters from refugee children over the years, and he answered every single one. Dr. Emily Parker published a landmark study on the psychological benefits of cultural celebrations in high-stress environments, using data from the Meridian's Hope as her primary case study. Her work influenced medical protocols across the fleet, and in the quiet of deep space, on transport ships carrying refugees to new lives, the tradition continued. Captains learned to watch for the quiet tears of children who had lost too much. Crews learned to create moments of magic and wonder. Engineers learned to bend their technical skills toward joy rather than just efficiency. Because humanity had taught the galaxy an important lesson. Efficiency matters. Logistics matter. Practical concerns matter. But none of those things matter as much as the tears of one child who believes in impossible things. The willingness to stop a starship, to redirect resources, to go to extraordinary lengths for a moment of happiness. That wasn't a weakness or an inefficiency. It was humanity's greatest strength. Years later, at a Galactic Council cultural exchange, Ambassador Lissa, formerly a Valorian refugee, spoke about humanity's influence on galactic culture. She stood before representatives of hundreds of species and told the story of the Meridian's Hope, of the little girl who cried because Santa couldn't find their ship, and of the human captain who changed course. She concluded her speech with words that resonated throughout the chamber. We talk much about humanity's technological contributions, their military capabilities, their economic influence. But I submit that their greatest gift to the galaxy is simpler and far more profound. They have taught us that kindness is not weakness, that caring about individual suffering, even when impractical, is the mark of true civilization. That sometimes the most important thing a person with power can do is use that power to preserve hope. She held up her daughter Kessa's old doll, carefully preserved after all these years. This doll, given to a frightened refugee child by a human crew determined to create magic in the darkness, represents everything we should aspire to as a galactic community. It represents the belief that no suffering is too small to address, no terror too insignificant to wipe away, no hope too foolish to protect. The assembly rose in a standing ovation. And in the back of the chamber, Commodore Marcus Dean watched quietly, Sarah Morgan at his side. "You changed the galaxy," Sarah whispered. "We changed it," Marcus corrected. "Every person on the Meridian's Hope that Christmas Eve. We just remembered what should have been obvious all along. In a universe full of impossible distances, hostile environments, and countless dangers, the most precious resource isn't fuel or technology or military strength. It's the willingness to care. That's the human advantage. Not our weapons, or our ships, or our technology, but our stubborn, illogical, absolutely essential belief that kindness matters, that joy matters, that the tears of one child are worth stopping the universe to address." On New Haven, that night, Kessa tucked her own daughter into bed. The little girl held the same doll that Kessa had carried across the stars years before. "Tell me again about Santa finding the ship," the child pleaded. Kessa activated the holographic projector, filling the room with dancing lights, and began the story. Once upon a time, there was a ship full of refugees traveling through the deepest, darkest part of space. And on that ship was a little girl who believed in impossible things. Her name was Kessa, and this is the true story of how her belief changed everything. As she told the tale, emphasizing the kindness of the human crew, the bravery of Captain Dean, and the magic of that Christmas Eve. She watched her daughter's eyes grow wide with wonder. And somewhere in deep space, aboard a refugee transport ship, another captain watched another child's tears and made the same decision that Marcus Dean had made years before. Because the lesson had taken root. Humanity had taught the galaxy that some things are more important than efficiency. Some tears are worth stopping for. Some beliefs are worth protecting. And sometimes, the most heroic thing you can do is simply choose to care. The story of the Meridian's hope became more than just a story. It became a template, a reminder, a call to action. Across the galaxy, in ships and stations, on planets and moons, people remembered the little Valorian girl who cried because Santa couldn't find their ship. And they remembered the human pilot who changed course. Because in the end, that's what defined humanity's place in the galaxy. Not their technology or their military might, but their unshakable conviction that kindness, compassion, and the willingness to do impractical things for emotional reasons weren't weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. They had looked at a cold, logical universe and decided it needed more warmth. They had faced impossible distances and decided that some tears were worth crossing them for. They had been told that emotions were inefficient, that caring about individual suffering was impractical, that logistics should always trump compassion. And they had responded with the most human answer possible. Watch us prove you wrong. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug and see you in the next story.